In 2025, the coffee industry is experiencing a significant shakeup. Rising costs, shifting consumer habits, and economic pressures have led to the closure of several prominent coffee chains. From experimental ventures like McDonald's CosMc to established names like Philz Coffee and AMT Coffee, here are the 10 coffee chains that are going out of business in 2025. 1. Starbucks. Back in 1971, a small coffee shop opened its doors in Seattle's Pike Place Market. It was run by 3 friends who were passionate about high-quality coffee beans and equipment. They named it Starbucks, inspired by a character in Moby Dick. At the time, it was just a humble shop for coffee purists. But over the next 5 decades, that modest little space grew into one of the most recognized names in the world. With over 38,000 stores across the globe, Starbucks didn't just serve coffee, it built a lifestyle. The real turning point came in 1982 when Howard Schultz joined the team. After a trip to Italy, he became captivated by the cafe culture there and brought back a bold vision. Schultz didn't just want to sell coffee, he wanted to create a third place between home and work. A comfortable space where people could connect, unwind, or plug in their laptops for a few productive hours. That idea struck a chord. Starbucks became more than a coffee shop, it became a cultural icon. For years, people lined up for their lattes and frappuccinos, turning Starbucks into a daily ritual. Whether it was a pre-work caffeine boost, a casual meeting spot, or a cozy place to study, the brand had firmly planted itself in everyday life. By the 1990s, Starbucks went public, and the 2000s saw the company expand at lightning speed. You would see one on every corner in some cities, sometimes even across the street from each other. But with rapid expansion came growing pains. Over time, the menu ballooned into something wild. Tens of thousands of possible drink combinations, seasonal items with names longer than your grocery list, and customization options that sometimes confused even the baristas. The simple charm began to feel a little overwhelming. Then came the drop in sales. For 2 quarters straight, Starbucks watched customer satisfaction take a hit. Long wait times, lukewarm mobile orders sitting on the counter, and that cozy vibe they once prided themselves on, slowly fading. In late 2024, Brian Nicole stepped in as CEO. Known for turning around chains like Chipotle and Taco Bell, he has earned a reputation as the go-to guy when things need fixing. His strategy for Starbucks is all about dialing things back. He's slashing the overstuffed menu by 30%, reintroducing ceramic mugs in stores, and bringing back handwritten names on cups, all in an effort to recapture the heart of what Starbucks used to be. His mission isn't just about speed or profit, it's about making Starbucks feel personal again. But the road ahead isn't smooth. Consumers today have endless options, from trendy local coffee joints to ready-to-drink cold brews at every supermarket. The challenge now is whether Starbucks can reconnect with its roots before the green mermaid fades from view. With shifting consumer habits and stiff competition, 2025 may be a defining year for a brand that once ruled the coffee world with confidence and could now use a double shot of reinvention. 2. Dutch Brothers. Dutch Bros isn't just a coffee company. It's a feel-good story that started with 2 dairy farming brothers in Oregon who traded in their milking stools for a coffee pushcart. In 1992, Dane and Travis Boersma decided they had had enough of life on the farm and wanted to try something new. That bold move led to the birth of Dutch Bros, a brand built on energy, friendliness, and customer connection. From the very beginning, Dutch Bros stood out. Their baristas, affectionately called Percent Broistus Percent, weren't just there to take your order. They made it a point to know your name, hype up your day, and toss around enough good vibes to make even your Monday morning feel like a celebration. It wasn't just about the drinks, it was about how you felt pulling up to that drive-through window. As the company grew, so did its fan base. Dutch Bros developed a near-cult following, especially on the West Coast, with their quick drive-through only setup and a menu full of sugary, customizable coffee and energy drinks. By the time they went public in 2021, they looked unstoppable, popping up in more cities, opening new shops at record speed, and giving bigger chains a serious run for their money. But fast forward to 2025 and things are starting to feel a little shaky. After a highly anticipated Investor Day presentation that didn't quite land, Dutch Bros' stock dropped 6% in a single day. And it didn't stop there. Since peaking in February, shares have fallen by about 30%. The strange part? The company is still doing fairly well on paper. Same-store sales rose 4.6% through March, which is solid. But Wall Street had sky-high expectations and wanted more aggressive growth targets. When those didn't materialize, the honeymoon phase ended. Another challenge Dutch Bros is facing is the unpredictable state of the coffee industry itself. Global coffee bean prices are bouncing all over the place due to weather problems and shifting trade dynamics. To cope with rising costs, the company already hiked prices earlier this year, which may have made some customers think twice before ordering their favorite drink. Since January 2024, Christine Barone has been at the helm as CEO. Her job? Keep the brand's momentum going while balancing rising costs, investor pressure, and changing customer habits. That's no small task. The charm of Dutch Bros has always been its mix of premium, personalized service, and that energetic, positive vibe. But when inflation bites and people start trimming their budgets, even the most loyal customers may swap their drive-through fix for a homemade brew. Competitors like Keurig Dr. Pepper are already reporting a jump in home coffee making. If that trend sticks, Dutch Bros will need to work even harder to stay top of mind. The company still has strong foundations and a passionate fan base, but keeping the magic alive in a shifting economy will be Barone's biggest test yet. 3. CosMc's. This one's a short but fascinating story about corporate ambition meeting reality. In late 2023, McDonald's, yes, the burger place, decided they wanted a piece of that sweet afternoon beverage market that Starbucks and Dutch Bros were dominating. They figured they were missing out on a massive $100 billion opportunity every day between lunch and dinner when their sales typically slump. So they created CosMc's, named after an obscure 1980s McDonald's mascot that most people had completely forgotten about. The concept was actually pretty clever. Small format stores focused on wild, customizable drinks and snacks for the afternoon crowd. We're talking matcha iced lattes, turmeric spiced lattes, prickly pear slushies with popping candy on top, and frozen sour cherry energy drinks. McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczynski was pumped about it, calling it a space they had % the right to win, %. They opened one location near their Chicago headquarters and 7 in Texas, complete with fancy drive-through technology that could manage traffic based on how complex your order was. But here's where things got interesting. The drinks were apparently too complicated for regular McDonald's operations. Think about it. McDonald's built its empire on speed and simplicity. Big Mac, fries, done. Suddenly asking their crews to make elaborate specialty beverages with multiple flavor combinations was like asking a race car driver to parallel park. Technically possible, but not what they're built for. After just over a year of testing, McDonald's announced they're shutting down all remaining CosMc's locations by the end of June 2025 and closing the app too. They are not completely giving up though. Some of the CosMc's-inspired drinks might show up at regular McDonald's locations as a test. The whole experiment shows how hard it is to break into the specialty coffee game, even when you're one of the biggest restaurant companies in the world. Sometimes the best ideas just don't fit your DNA. 4. Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons isn't just a coffee shop in Canada. It's practically a national institution. The chain was founded in 1964 by Tim Horton, a hockey legend who played for the Toronto Maple Leafs and other NHL teams. Starting with just 2 donut varieties in Hamilton, Ontario, it grew into something that defines Canadian identity almost as much as hockey itself. For decades, Timmy's % was where blue-collar workers grabbed their morning coffee, where families stopped for donuts after kids' games, and where anyone could get a decent cup of coffee and a friendly chat without breaking the bank. But something weird has happened over the past few years. Tim Hortons has lost its mojo. A Maclean's magazine survey dropped a bombshell. Tim Hortons isn't even Canadians' favorite coffee shop anymore. It's sitting in 4th place behind McDonald's, Second Cup, and Starbucks. 4th place in Canada. That's like finding out apple pie isn't America's favorite dessert anymore. The company's US expansion has been a disaster, with locations closing left and right despite multiple attempts to crack the American market. Sales have been declining, and the brand that once symbolized unpretentious, everyday Canadian values is struggling to connect with younger customers who want Instagram-worthy experiences. Part of the problem is that Tim Hortons never evolved with the times. While Starbucks created cozy spaces where people want to hang out and work on their laptops, Tim Hortons stuck with the fast food model of get-in, get-out efficiency. That worked great in the 1980s and 90s, but today's customers want more than just quick service. They want an experience. The irony is that Tim Hortons actually has some products that could be huge hits if they marketed them right. Their home-style biscuits are apparently vegan, which could appeal to younger, health-conscious customers, but they don't advertise this at all. They are sitting on potential gold mines, but acting like it's still 1985. The chain has become so focused on speed and cost-cutting that they have forgotten what made people love them in the first place. It's not just about the coffee, it's about feeling like you belong somewhere, and Tim Hortons seems to have lost that welcoming community feel that made it special. 5. Caribou Coffee. Caribou Coffee has always been the cozy alternative to the coffee giants. Founded in 1992 by John and Kim Puckett after they fell in love with the coffee culture during a trip to Alaska, the chain built its identity around creating warm, cabin-like spaces where people could escape the hustle and bustle. The logo, a majestic caribou, and the rustic decor made every location feel like a little retreat in the woods. For years, especially in the Midwest, Caribou was the coffee shop where locals went to avoid the corporate feel of Starbucks while still getting quality drinks. The company found its sweet spot in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and surrounding states, where the outdoorsy, authentic vibe really resonated with customers. At its peak, Caribou felt like it was on track to be a real competitor to the big chains. They had around 700 locations at one point and were expanding into new markets. The coffee was consistently good, the atmosphere was genuinely welcoming, and they had a loyal customer base that appreciated the more personal, less commercialized experience. But while Caribou was focused on perfecting their cozy coffeehouse concept, the coffee world was changing around them. Here's where things get complicated. Caribou is now owned by JB Holding Company, the same investment firm that owns Panera Bread, Krispy Kreme, and a bunch of other food brands. JAB bought Caribou in 2012, and initially it seemed like a good match. More resources, better supply chains, potential for growth. But over time, JAB's priorities shifted. They started putting more energy and money into expanding Panera and reviving Krispy Kreme, leaving Caribou as the middle child that doesn't get much attention. Instead of opening new Caribou locations, JAB has actually been closing them or converting them into Panera concepts. The company now has around 500 locations, down from its peak, and most of those are still concentrated in the same Midwest markets where they started. Outside of that region, Caribou is practically unknown. While Starbucks has nearly 40,000 locations worldwide and Dunkin' has over 12,000, Caribou remains a regional player with limited growth prospects. The loyal customers who remain absolutely love the brand, but without significant investment in expansion, marketing, and innovation, Caribou risks becoming another beloved local chain that slowly fades away as the big players dominate more and more of the market. 6. The Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. Here's a coffee chain with a pretty cool backstory that most people don't know about. The Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf didn't start in some trendy neighborhood or college town. It began in 1963 when Herbert Hyman opened the first location on Brentwood's San Vicente Boulevard in Los Angeles. The guy was ahead of his time, focusing on premium coffee beans and loose-leaf teas when most Americans were still drinking instant coffee from jars. By the 1980s, they invented something that would change coffee culture forever: the ice-blended drink. Yeah, that's right. They basically created the blended coffee drink category that everyone else copied. Starbucks didn't introduce the Frappuccino until 1995, more than a decade after Coffee Bean was already perfecting their icy creations. The chain had some serious momentum going into the 2000s. At their peak, they had over 200 locations spread across the globe, with a strong presence in California, Asia, and the Middle East. Their signature drinks, like the original Ice Blended and Vanilla Ice Blended, became cult favorites, especially among college students and anyone trying to beat the California heat. The brand had this laid-back California vibe that felt more approachable than Starbucks' increasingly corporate atmosphere. They were also big on tea culture before it became trendy, offering everything from traditional chai to exotic herbal blends. But here's where things get tricky. While they were busy perfecting their original recipes, the coffee world was exploding with innovation and competition. The real trouble started when bigger chains began muscling in on their territory. Starbucks went crazy with expansion, opening stores on what felt like every corner, while Dunkin' pushed hard into the West Coast market. Independent coffee shops started popping up everywhere, offering artisanal experiences that made chain coffee feel boring. The coffee bean found itself stuck in the middle, not big enough to compete with Starbucks' marketing budget and store count, but not unique enough to stand out against local favorites. In 2019, Jollibee Foods Corporation, the Filipino fast food giant, bought the brand for $350 million, hoping to inject new life into the struggling chain. The new owners talked big about expansion plans and menu innovation, but the revival has been slower than expected. Many U.S. locations have quietly closed, especially in competitive markets where rent is high and foot traffic is low. The brand still has loyal fans who swear by their ice-blended drinks, but without major changes, the coffee bean risks becoming another nostalgic brand that couldn't keep up with the times. 7. Gloria Jean's Coffees. Gloria Jean's Coffees has one of those origin stories that sounds like it came straight out of a feel-good movie. Back in 1979, Gloria Jean Kvetko was working at a small coffee and gift shop in Long Grove, Illinois, when she decided to buy the place and make it her own. She had this wild idea that coffee could be more than just a morning necessity. It could be an experience filled with amazing flavors and personal connections. Gloria Jean started experimenting with flavored coffees way before anyone else thought it was cool, creating blends like hazelnut vanilla and Irish cream that made coffee feel like dessert. Her little shop became so popular that people would drive from neighboring towns just to try her latest creations. The 1980s and 90s were golden years for Gloria Jean's. The company went franchise crazy, opening hundreds of locations across the United States and eventually expanding internationally. At one point, they had over 1,000 stores worldwide, with a strong presence in shopping malls where the smell of their flavored coffees would draw people in from across the food court. Their whole business model was built around creating a cozy, welcoming atmosphere where customers could sample different flavors before buying bags of beans to take home. They were like the Baskin-Robbins of coffee, dozens of flavors, friendly service, and that small-town charm that made every visit feel special. The brand also got into the cafe business, offering light meals and pastries alongside their signature drinks. But somewhere in the 2000s, the coffee landscape shifted dramatically, and Gloria Jean's got left behind. Starbucks exploded into a global phenomenon, turning coffee into a lifestyle brand with trendy drinks and Instagram-worthy locations. Independent coffee shops started focusing on single-origin beans and artisanal brewing methods, making flavored coffee seem artificial and outdated. Meanwhile, Gloria Jean stuck with their original formula, lots of flavored options, but not much innovation beyond that. Today, they have fewer than 50 locations left in the United States, mostly scattered in small towns and shopping centers that time forgot. The brand is actually doing better internationally, with hundreds of stores in Australia and other markets where they got in early and built strong local partnerships. But in America, where coffee culture has become incredibly sophisticated and competitive, Gloria Jean's feels like a relic from a simpler time when adding hazelnut syrup to coffee was considered exotic. 8. Biggby Coffee. Biggby Coffee started with a pretty humble beginning back in 1995 when Bob Fish and Mary Roselle opened their first location in East Lansing, Michigan, right near Michigan State University. Originally called Beaner's Coffee, the company built its identity around being the fun, quirky alternative to the increasingly corporate coffee chains. They embraced bright orange branding, silly drink names, and a philosophy that coffee should make people happy, not stressed out. The founders wanted to create a place where customers felt like they were hanging out with friends, rather than just grabbing caffeine and running. The chain found its sweet spot in the Midwest, especially in Michigan, where they became a local institution. Biggby's whole thing is creating drinks with names that make you smile, stuff like Cafe Mocha, Light and Sweet, and their famous teddy bear drink, which is basically hot chocolate with espresso. They have built a solid following by focusing on friendly service and community involvement, sponsoring local events and getting involved in college campuses. The company has grown to over 300 locations, mostly in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and surrounding states, and they have managed to maintain that local coffee shop feel even as they have expanded. Their baristas are trained to be genuinely enthusiastic, not just going through the motions like you sometimes see at bigger chains. But here's where things get interesting. Biggby is facing some serious challenges that go way beyond just competing with Starbucks. The labor shortage that's hitting every industry has been particularly brutal for coffee shops, which rely on having enough staff to handle morning rushes and maintain that personal service that customers expect. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, there are about 10 million open jobs but only 5.7 million unemployed people, which means companies are scrambling to attract and keep workers. Biggby's response has been pretty innovative. They created something called the Life You Love Laboratory, spearheaded by their Chief Purpose Officer, Laura Ike. This isn't just typical corporate wellness stuff. It's a comprehensive program designed to help employees grow personally and professionally, even if they don't stay with the company forever. They offer workshops on budgeting, goal setting, and healthy habits, recognizing that a paycheck alone isn't enough to keep people motivated. The program addresses what Aish calls the percent two-factor theory percent, meeting basic needs like fair pay and benefits while also focusing on what actually motivates people to come to work every day. It's a smart approach, but it also shows how much coffee chains have to invest just to keep their doors open these days. 9. Tully's Coffee. Tully's Coffee has one of the most dramatic rise and fall stories in the coffee world, and it reads like a business thriller with plot twists that nobody saw coming. The whole thing started in 1992 when Tom Tully O'Keefe decided Seattle needed another coffee company to challenge Starbucks' growing dominance. O'Keefe wasn't just some random guy with a coffee dream. He had serious business experience and a vision of creating a more premium, sophisticated coffee experience. Tully's positioned itself as the thinking person's coffee shop, focusing on high-quality beans, expert roasting, and a more mature atmosphere than the increasingly commercialized Starbucks locations. For a while, it actually worked pretty well. Tully's grew to over 100 locations throughout the Pacific Northwest, and they had some legitimate credibility in the coffee world. They supplied coffee to airlines, hotels, and other businesses, building a solid wholesale operation alongside their retail stores. The brand had a loyal following among coffee purists who appreciated their attention to quality and their commitment to maintaining that Seattle coffee culture authenticity. They even had locations in some pretty prime real estate, including spots in downtown Seattle and other major cities. But running a coffee chain is incredibly expensive and complicated, and Tully's started having financial problems in the late 2000s that just kept getting worse. Here's where the story gets really wild. In 2013, Patrick Dempsey, the actor famous for playing McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy, teamed up with some investors to buy Tully's out of bankruptcy. At first, it seemed like a celebrity rescue story that might actually work. Dempsey was passionate about coffee and seemed committed to reviving the brand. But the whole thing turned into a legal nightmare almost immediately. There were disputes over ownership, lawsuits flying in multiple directions, and allegations of mismanagement that made the business impossible to run effectively. By 2018, most of the remaining Tully's locations had closed for good, and the brand filed for bankruptcy again. Today, there are maybe a handful of coffee shops that still use the Tully's name, but they are not really connected to the original company. They are more like ghosts of what used to be a legitimate Starbucks competitor. The whole Tully's saga shows how quickly things can go wrong in the coffee business, even when you have celebrity backing and a decent product. 10. Peet's Coffee. Peet's Coffee deserves way more respect than it gets because this company basically invented specialty coffee in America. Alfred Peet opened the first Peet's in Berkeley, California in 1966, and this guy was a true coffee revolutionary. He grew up in the Netherlands where his family ran a coffee business, so he knew what real coffee was supposed to taste like. When he came to America and tasted the weak, flavorless stuff that most people were drinking, he was horrified. Peet introduced Americans to dark roasted, full-flavored coffee that actually had character and complexity. Here's the crazy part. Alfred Peet personally trained the guys who would later start Starbucks. Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Bowker all learned about coffee from Pete before they opened their first store in Seattle. For the first year, Starbucks actually sold Pete's coffee beans because they didn't have their own roasting operation yet. Pete's built a cult following among serious coffee drinkers who appreciated the craftsmanship and attention to detail that went into every batch. The company stayed relatively small and focused, concentrating on quality over rapid expansion. They developed legendary blends like Major Dickinson's blend and French roast that became benchmarks for what dark coffee should taste like. Unlike Starbucks, which eventually became more about convenience and consistency, Pete's maintained its artisanal approach, hand-roasting small batches and refusing to compromise on quality even as they grew. The brand became particularly popular in California, where coffee culture was more sophisticated and customers were willing to pay premium prices for superior products. But 2023 and 2024 have been rough years for Pete's, with some troubling signs that suggest the company is struggling more than they're letting on. In 2023, they had to close their large distribution center and warehouse in East Oakland after a tragic roof collapse that killed an employee. It was a devastating incident that not only highlighted safety concerns, but also forced the company to relocate operations and lay off 110 workers. Then, just recently, they quietly closed their location in Roseville, California, without much explanation beyond vague corporate speak about Percent always looking for ways to improve across all aspects of the business. Percent, when a company that's been around for nearly 60 years starts closing established locations and speaking in corporate buzzwords, it usually means they are dealing with some serious financial pressure. The coffee market has become incredibly competitive, with independent roasters offering similar quality to Pete's while chains like Starbucks dominate the convenience market. Pete's finds itself in that difficult middle ground, too expensive and slow for casual coffee drinkers, but not unique enough to justify premium prices when customers can get similar quality from local roasters who offer more personal service and community connection. Which of these coffee brands are you sad about its looming closure? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that already.